Regardless of the position you are in your fitness journey or whatever thing you're pursuing, I always feel like you can learn from someone else. There's a level or a degree of anecdotal advice or even experience that really helps to widen your perspective. For me personally, I'm both lacking in the sophistication of like the methodical and the theoretical understanding of like fitness and also actually applying the physical sense. So, in that sense, there's a lot for me to learn from both a scientific view of how to approach rep schemes, certain like supplement or accessory works and whatnot. But there's also a level, or I think I may put a bit more emphasis on, is other people's experience. I can use people's experience and what they've learned and apply it to myself, right? And I guess what we can argue is that for every individual, the way your body responds is rather unique and personal. So, what that means is sometimes your body may not recover as effectively as others. Well, in terms like form, maybe other people just can't do arse to grass simply because their femurs are just way too long, or maybe they've just got very restricted joints or like tendons, right? In that sense, there's a degree of awareness that you need to have while trying to use other people's experience and applying it to yourself. But in the most general sense, I think that generally speaking, when it's an objective or universal idea that someone portrays, it should be able to clearly overlap with what you're doing. In my case, more recently, I've been learning a lot from people commenting in my YouTube channel, right? When people comment things that they pick up on, what I couldn't pick up on in these sessions, and when I just like put these videos out, there's some nuances and even like the holistic things such as like rep schemes, form, and I guess intensity and volume, like how I manipulate that stuff. There's a lot to learn. And specifically, I wanted to talk about form and time under tension. Things that someone, also a guy under the name of Ghost Inspired, he mentioned, and his insight was very specific to what I was doing, right? So right here is me doing a Nordic curl with pretty bad form, right? I've got a lot of anterior pelvic tilt. My butt is like really tweaked up. So I guess in terms of leverages, this doesn't apply as much of a contraction in the areas that are I guess ideal for what you need for the Nordic curls. So just then I tried doing the Nordic with very good form, having a very straight back and no excessive anterior pelvic tilt, and just like sticking my butt out, right? And in all honesty, that was one of the biggest blows to my ego, especially since I couldn't even do a quarter of my range of motion with good form. And the way I looked at Nordics was, if I could do it full with a pretty bad form, then over time, innately, just through the stimulus and I guess the amount of intensity I'm doing, I'll just naturally get stronger, and with the strength, I'll be able to perform it better with better form, right? But I think that's pretty far from it, because when I started doing those assisted, I guess elevated Nordics, and I couldn't even get past that quarter point, it's because there was a very distinct and a different, I guess like a very unique feeling of contraction in my hamstrings, right? What happened was, when I went down, it just felt as though I was a complete beginner, and it felt like this was the very first time I ever did a Nordic, simply because of how strained it felt. It just felt super hard, and yeah, like holistically, it was a massive blow to my ego, because I'd realized how far away I was to an actual perfected form of the Nordic curl. Other things I wanted to mention was, or at least what Ghost Inspired considered, was how I wasn't breaking parallel in the hyperextensions. So the back extensions that I did, I've been doing in my prior sessions, right? So essentially the objective of what I'm doing, so the reason why I'm doing these back extensions is to strengthen my posterior chain. So like my erectors, my glutes, hamstrings, and all that, right? So while the hamstrings are maintained in an isometric position, the glutes are really, I guess, contracting quite a bit. And mainly speaking, the erectors are what you need to be most concerned about. Or I guess that's my insight of what this is trying to do, right? So I decided, you know what, I'll learn from his advice and just try and break parallel and try and keep myself straight. Now, I've always had this concern that if I went beyond, it would be an excessive form of, I guess, spine extension, and therefore it would kind of like, put excessive load on my spine, which isn't healthy, right? But if you just go to the normal level of having a base straight line, then it should be okay, right? And when I did those, the contraction of my glutes was ridiculous, and it just felt so different to how I normally do it, right? And when I went up, I could really start to feel the engagement in my erectors, and it was a very nice discovery. It was a very nice advice, and I'm really glad that I was able to have this kind of thought. All right. So essentially, this session overall was a session of learning, throwing away my pride and just doing things with good form. So yeah, that was basically the overview of this session, and I'll finish it off here.